starting to shut down now. That's one issue that's following, but that it does relate indirectly to Israel, because Israel, you know, Trump gave them a few days, Hamas, to surrender, and it's coming down. It's getting really, really bad over there. So it's something to pray about. It's like, there's a book called 25 Signs of the End Times by Don Stewart, and a lot of these things come up every day of where we see right now is the Middle East, Ukraine. There's a guy he's called the son of Hamas because his father started Hamas, and he's a believer now. And I think I'm going to show parts of his video. As a video, it's really, if you haven't seen it, it's really good. He spoke to the UN, and he's unreal. I mean, he's just telling like it is. He goes, I grew up, I was in prison for Hamas, tortured, all these things, and he explains why they're so dangerous and what's happening in the Middle East right now. So we'll, I might show it. I'm not sure if I will yet. But anyway, so Proverbs 13, verse 6, again, the Common Sense Dictionary. These are all things that are pretty common sense, not so much that they're groundbreaking spiritually, although they could be. Because if you realize any of these issues, it can change your life. So Proverbs 13, verse 6, it says, righteousness guards him whose way is blameless, but wickedness overthrows the sinner. Now, these are like principles that we are trying to explain to our kids and our grandkids. It's not, there are direct circumstances, right? But there's principles that go behind that cause people to do things against God. And we like to look at direct like a direct thing. Like, okay, who you hang out with matters. But when you tell your kids that, they're like, well, we're only in lunch together. We're only, you know, they're not seeing that they are being shaped by their friends. And we're going to get that tonight. It's in here. So righteousness guards him whose way is blameless. Like when you're living a righteous life, the righteousness of God is guarding your life because of the way you're living. But wickedness overthrows the sinner. There's one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing, and one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches. Now, listen, I got to tell you, the one thing I don't understand is God has given us a huge ministry with the car shows. I mean, it's really incredible. But one of the things that I'm not really part of is the money. These people are millionaires. And so you look at somebody who, one car company, it was a place that you take your car, like these guys on TV where they take a car in their garage, you know, they redo it. And so this company had a kind of a restored Ford from the 60s, and it's sitting there, and it had a sign advertising saying, we will restore your car from the ground up, and it's 90-day turnaround. In 90 days your car will be done, and the starting price is $250K. $250,000. Now I'm looking at that like that's like buying a house. In the old days, at least. You know what I mean? And so I was talking to this guy in front of us who won the show, which has happened a few times. And he had this, I asked him, what do you think about that 250, you know, and he goes, I've got 300 in this, and that's not counting my time. 300? And you've done hundreds of hours? And I started to think, so listen, and I'm not, listen, they need Christ. They need God in their life, okay? But what's funny is because we normally don't walk with those kind of people, we're not familiar. But like when I do these shows, I kind of put everything aside. Like all bets are off. They need Christ. That's all I care about. But you know, when you think, man, how could you pay $75,000 for a paint job? That's nothing. That's nothing. And in fact, I've had many people tell me this, that as it is now in the car industry, I'm not talking about Mako or those type, you know, I'm talking about custom, The cheapest that any of them will do anything, cheapest, is $20,000. Now you and I would be like, that's more than my car cost. And I remember Don Child before he passed away, and was part of the most amazing change in car painting in history with Earl Scheib. And, you know, their big thing was $29.95, occasionally $19, occasionally more. But, you know, the general rule was $29.95. Well, okay. And I asked Don about it. He goes, there's no way I would do it. He goes, I wouldn't pay $1,000. But we're looking at people now that because of the show industry, they're paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for a paint job for one car. So that's why it costs $250 to start. Like, we're going to rebuild your car, but it's going to cost $250 up front. But what does it say here about riches? Some have riches but have nothing, and some have nothing but they have riches, because happiness is not from the riches you have. And a lot of the people that do have riches, they're not happy because of that. And there's one who makes himself rich yet has nothing, and one who makes himself poor yet has great riches. And this one guy who won a part in the car show, and I said, oh, you won. And he goes, well, even a squirrel gets a nut once in a while. Like, in other words, he knew that it's not such a big deal that he won. But probably it is, but he doesn't want to say it in front of me. That it's, you know, even a squirrel gets a nut once in a while. Meaning, you know, anybody could win. But riches in themselves are not happiness. I know there's people that they think if they had more money, if they just won the lottery. There was just a lottery ticket sold, where the lottery's like millions now, and it was sold in a liquor store in Ventura. And they know where it is, because they keep track of where the person went in and paid, you know, and then the winning ticket is in there, but it hasn't been claimed yet. Isn't that interesting? So somebody has millions, but they haven't picked it up. They don't know about it. So look at what it says here. Money is not the answer. The ransom of a man's life is his riches, but the poor does not hear rebuke. Now, the ransom of a man's life is talking about what would it take to ransom that man's life. We know Jesus is the only answer, but in a worldly sense, people think of more money to ransom that person's life, but a poor person won't really listen. Now, I'm thinking, and I just saw this, there are streets in LA that are jammed up on both sides. You couldn't drive down the street with old motorhomes. That people live in those motorhomes. They dump their sewage on the street. The police don't want to deal with it. The city doesn't want to deal with it. And you'll be driving along, and you'll see, you look over here, there's a street like that, and you're going, are you serious? And so they're trying to help them, but it's really difficult. But the point is, those are the kind of people that don't really listen to anyone. Think about it. You can't drain your sewer out on the street. And they don't care. You can't dump your trash on the sidewalk. They don't care. I preached at a church that's right near LA City College, and it used to be the parking lot for City College was opened up as like a flea market. I don't know what else to call it. People are selling everything that you could think of. But now it's expanded, because once they let that start, now it's all over the sidewalks, every which way you go, to where you can't walk down the street because people are selling stuff. Now, if you're thinking in the old days when you had to have a permit, like a business license, it's gone. It's gone. Because they can't keep up. It's so huge, it can't keep up. Like somewhere like Mexico City or Vietnam, it's like that now. In America. So riches and being poor you wonder if people, how they would listen. Now, I was in this church in LA, and I said, look, you really have to beef up your security. Number one, because of where you are. But number two, people today will come into churches, the one in the Mormon church, unbelievable. The guy crashed his truck in the church, shoots 10 people, 4 are dead, and then he burns the church down. And here's another time that it's where once church starts is when people tend to come in. That's why at a certain point we should lock the door and say, you know, you're not coming. Now, if you see somebody you know, fine. But I was in this church when halfway through the sermon, this guy walked in. And I wanted to say, what are you doing? But see, I was a guest there. So the argument would be, well, we want him to hear the message. Well, okay, you're going to have a problem because you've got to close it off. And another thing is, you can't have more than one door because they'll use the other door. So sometimes we have to do things, and what the Bible's contrasting here, how sometimes poor people, they're not poor for any reason, or they might be, and they don't listen. They don't listen to rebuke. Where you could tell someone, look, you could actually get a job and change your life. They don't listen. So instead, the city has to go and try to clean up these streets. Guess who's paying for it? The other city residents or taxpayers, they're the ones paying for it. So you wonder, could we go talk to these people? And don't you love this one? They will go and say, we have apartments you can move into. I mean, right now, we'll take you and you can move in. They don't want to do it. They'd rather live in their 1961 Winnebago that can't move anyway, and it's sitting there. They don't want to leave it. Now, this is a whole other subject, but it's interesting that Proverbs addresses riches versus being poor and how people respond and how they, the one who makes himself poor yet has great riches. The ransom of a man's life is his riches, but the poor does not hear rebuke. Now, just think about that for a second and put yourself there. If somebody rebukes you or challenges you, are you listening? And I always tell people, especially after doing this for a long time, someone that you may not think might have a great idea. So we would be wise to listen. We don't look at them like, well, who are you? Although we do. We should say, well, maybe that's a good idea. If we're in the jail and an inmate says, you know, it would be better if we did this, and you got a good point. It would be better. So hearing rebuke is very important in our lives, of being ready to listen to what people say. The light of the righteous rejoices, but the lamp of the wicked will be put out. Here again is, in a continual sense, the wicked eventually their lamp is put out. The righteous gets brighter and brighter as the day goes because they're following the steps of the Lord. Where the wicked, and how many times do we see someone that we knew that was wicked where their life ends? I had 3 funerals behind Grocery Outlet. Now you might say, why over there? Well, a lot of times druggies and alcoholics will go back there and do whatever they do. One young girl had a college degree, in her probably 30. She went out behind Grocery Outlet and drank herself to death in the winter and froze to death. So her friends wanted to have the service there. So here I am with these, they're all alcoholics. And I go, have you guys seen enough yet? Have you seen what alcohol's doing to you? And so I've had a couple like that. Now you might look at that's just a nowhere place, like, but see, for me, I go in these places where something different happened for me. And I might drive by a motel in town that you might just think is a motel, and I go, yeah, I've been in there a few times too. I couldn't help but notice how, Motel 6 is gone. They've been working on it, and now they're getting down to just the cleaning up the rubble. And Motel 6, A lot of people used it. You know, it was reasonable, and one of the newer ones in town, by the way. If you want to look at motels in Tahoe, it's one of the newest ones. I remember a lady she had like 9 dogs, and she was staying at the post office out in Myers, and the sheriff came out and said, "You can't stay here." It was right around this time of year where it's starting to get cold, but not really cold yet. And so they called me, and I said, "Lady, you can't stay here." So I took her to Motel 6. Now, we had to get search and rescue to come to bring all the dogs. And so she spent the night, and you know, we were all thinking, you know, the sheriff's like, "Jerry, thank you, you know, da 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 da," and you know, we helped this lady. And she calls me the next day and says, "I just want to thank you because you probably saved my life, but I'm not staying here. I can't stand Motel 6. So she went back on the street. Now that's hard. That's somebody who won't take rebuke. You had a room paid for, but no. That's what I'm saying these people in LA do, only they're in their motorhomes. And the city comes, you know, we got places over here. No, we don't want to go over there. So this whole thing will end up one way or the other for the righteous versus the wicked. By pride comes nothing but strife. But with the well-advised is wisdom. Now, listen, I want you to think for a second. This is a biblical word, okay? Well-advised. A well-advised person is one who has done. He's listened to rebuke and encouragement and whatever else. He's listened. He's listened and he's figured out the best way to go. He's well-advised. But the prideful person, in his own pride, doesn't want to listen to anybody because he thinks he's got it all together already. If somebody said to you, "Look, you're doing a good job here, but you could do better," we should say, "Okay, show me." But you and I know people that will not listen. We're dealing with one at the church right now. It's nobody that's here right now, and it's nobody that I'm going to, only a couple of you would know who it is, but it's a person you can tell them. You can't jump off the roof. And they just look at you. And you know they're going to try to. So what does the scripture say? Pride comes nothing but strife, but with the well-advised, I'm going to start, that's a great term. Are we well-advised? You're well-advised if you listen to your teachers in school. Get your homework done over the weekend. Well-advised, right? Well-advised. Prideful's like, "I'll do it Sunday night at 10. You remember those days? Do you remember when you were a kid and the idea of, when I went to Bible college, my roommate, his name was Takamasa Suzuki, he's from Japanese. Missionaries had reached him and brought him to America to go to Bible college. The guy is disciplined beyond belief. And they put him in with me. And I was in sports, and I remember he'd be sitting, he's always at his desk, always. Jetty, where are you going? Where do you go? I go, "I got practice. I got soccer practice." And he goes, No, you need to study. Finally, and I liked him. Finally, they gave him his own room finally because he really could not, he's just too disciplined for anybody. But when it came to grades, yeah, then he's right at the top because all he did is study. So you remember those times where maybe you were that person. I'm looking around, I'm scanning the room, and I'm not really getting any connections. I tried to look twice at Fernando, but I thought, no, I don't think so. I don't think he was the one. But you know, how many, let me put it this way, how many of you knew somebody like that, where all they do is study? Do you have anybody in school you went to school with that was just studious? They became a doctor? I remember at South Tahoe High, my oldest daughter, Becca, she had 3 co-students in her grade that are doctors now. 3 in one class. Well, what were they like in school? I can tell you right now. They studied. They were studying not to finish, but they were studying so they could get into Stanford. Do you know what I mean? They weren't looking at it like, well, I'm going to graduate with a B. No. They're looking at it like I'm going to Johns Hopkins. So, those are ones who listen. Wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase. Like a person who's dishonest and works under the table and does this and this, eventually, see, these are always eventually, they're going to lose everything. But the person who's doing it the right way will be blessed in the end. He who gathers by labor will increase. I remember when we were in high school, a young friend of mine who's, by the way, I'm back in contact with. Well, all of us were doing what we were doing. He got a job at 7-Eleven. It didn't matter if it was 7-Eleven, just to remember that he did. And all he did is save his money. And when it came to us, like, we want to get a car, we struggled. Well, he made enough that he just went and bought one. Labor is not bad. Right? Wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it is a tree of life. Now, when you want something, you're hoping for something, you feel that heart sickness, a heaviness in your heart, because you can't accomplish or get what you want, but you feel that heart sickness where eventually when it comes, then it's a tree of life. Like you're blessed. Why are you so happy? Because I finally received what I have been longing for. He who despises the word will be destroyed, but he who fears the commandment will be rewarded. Now there's a great scripture about listening to the Bible, reading the Bible, and understanding the Bible, and we're still reeling from Charlie Kirk, and he would teach on this all the time. He's telling these young kids, you need to read the Word, you need to read the Word, you need to follow the Bible. And so people are now aware of that, and that particular influence that he had. A lot of people have kind of been woken up by him challenging them to seek the Lord. But he who despises the word will be destroyed, but he who fears the commandment will be rewarded. So when we say you need to get into the Word, you need to read the Word, you need to search the Bible, and that's what it's talking about right here. The law of the wise is a fountain of life, to turn one away from the snares of death. So following the law, by the way, this is so apropos today that Matthew 24 says in the last days, lawlessness will reign. And we're seeing that right now. I don't know if you've been watching the news. I like to tune in occasionally and see what's going on. What'd you turn me off for? Turn me back on. So, did you see the guy that was the head of the school board in Iowa that's an illegal? He got hired as the head of the school board. He's a citizen of like Guyana. And he made $300,000 a year. His PhD is phony. He has no degree. And the lady that was the head of the school board was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. She's running for Senate, or she was. I think she's pretty much done. Because everyone in Iowa was looking at her like, how did you hire this guy? Not only that, he had a criminal record. But you want to know about DEI, which is not a biblical term, by the way, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's the idea that, we've got to hire somebody that's Hispanic or black or Irish or whatever it might be, and he was hired under DEI. The touting was this: it's the first black superintendent of schools. See, they were all happy. But now they're like, Well, how are we supposed to know? They didn't even go to school. And there's been a few others lately that, aside from the people in the streets of LA that we see every night on the news, there are people that are in high positions that are illegal, that have been busted. It's very interesting. It shows you that they're not just going after certain people. No. They have people that have failed to appear, have been ordered to be removed. They already were ordered to be removed. And then they go after ICE because ICE is being mean to these people. I'm like, come on. The law. But lawlessness has increased. And now we're facing another shutdown where hopefully we don't go like 7-8 weeks, where, people in the Marines, the Army, they're not getting paid. They don't get paid. National park workers don't get paid. And this is all because, do you know what the key issue is? Can I say it? Can I give an opinion? With John and Norma, it's okay. The number one issue is the Democrats want illegals to have medical insurance. Yeah. And the Republicans are like, we're $37 billion in debt. $37 billion in debt, and you want to give them free medical? So this is what we're fighting about. This is why the government is shut down. Is the Dems are saying, no way, not unless you give them medical, and the Republicans are saying, no. I'm just saying, lawlessness is gone. Nobody cares if people are violating immigration law. They don't care about that. But if you're looking at the law, like, wait a minute, it's the law. I think it's one of the greatest signs of the end times. I really do. Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th and killed 1,500 people. According to the UN, they didn't do anything wrong. You see what I mean? It's people are making up their own laws or what they consider is right and wrong. So wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase. And I got another common sense. You look at somebody that's illegally making money, like selling drugs. I knew a kid in my church that made $2,000 a week delivering drugs from Humboldt County to Riverside. And he had a little, like a Toyota pickup, and he'd just do this run. Every run he'd make $2,000. Well, finally, he realized it's wrong. And he gave his life to God. The other thing you tell you is all that money he made is gone. He'd say, I don't know what happened to it. But the guy that was working in a job doing so much labor, they saved their money. That's what God's word says. So labor is good. He who despises the word will be destroyed. He who fears the commandment will be rewarded. The law of the wise is a fountain of life, to turn one away from the snares of death. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the unfaithful is hard. Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool lays open his folly. You know, sometimes as Christians, we try to be respectful to other people, right? Even if they're rude to us, we try to be nice. I remember one time the people across the street, we had vacation rentals all around us. So it's party, on the weekends were party time. I mean, you can't sleep, you can't. And I remember the police came out, and these guys are all retired now. I can tell this story now. So the guy comes to the door and says, you know, if you guys don't tone down the music, I'm going to come back and I'm going to arrest you. It's as simple as that. Like, you've got to tone it down. So he went down the street and hid in the bushes. The cop did. And as soon as the other cars cleared, guess what? The party started up again. So he went to the door and he knocked on the door. I could hear him across the street. He knocks on the door. The guy opens the door. Are you stupid or what? That was his interaction with them. And so at that time, you know, this is when they were doing the VHRs and all those things that we now have, the laws and stuff. So he says to him, okay, fine. I'm giving you a ticket for excessive noise. The minimum is $300. So the next morning, the guy that was renting the house comes over to us and says, "You're going to pay for that $300." And I go, "You're out of your freaking mind." I said, is there something wrong with you? One, he never came back, but I guess he was thinking, well, you're the ones who called. That's a fool. That's a fool. The officer told you, tone it down and you're fine. I remember hundreds of parties in LA where I'd go and say, if you tone it down, fine. We don't want to come back, we're busy. But if we do come back, I love this, and we don't make, I'm talking about LAPD in that time, we didn't make idle threats. If we said, if we come back, someone's going to jail, I guarantee you someone's going. So a couple times you go back and, okay, what's your name? Mr. Jones, you live here? Okay, you're under arrest. And he go. But in the majority of times, what do? They turn it down. They're not that stupid. This is so good in commenting on the law. The law of the wise is a fountain of life to turn away from the snares of death. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the unfaithful is hard. Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool lays open his folly. A wicked messenger falls into trouble, but a faithful ambassador brings health. And all of these things, if you put this with the laws of man, it all makes sense, of common sense, of following the laws, because those who don't will come to a swift end. Not Trinity, but Trinity's mom, Renee, I was going to the doctor in San Francisco. This is like 20 years ago. And Renee goes, "So Dad, can we get something to eat?" And there's the McDonald's. Well, down there, the McDonald's are like a fortress because of the problems they have. 15 minutes to eat your food, no lingering, all these signs. So I go, all right, fine. So we go in and order food. And so this guy, because they're always usually hanging around, this guy says, can you give me some money? I need some money. And I said, well, let me talk to you. And I wanted to do a teaching for Renee. So I said, I'll help you, but I want you to tell me why you're in this condition. He says, I owned a home in the Bay Area. I was making serious money. Couple cars, Mercedes, everything. And now I'm living under a bridge. And I go, well, what happened? He goes, I got into crack cocaine. I went through my house. I went through everything I owned. And now I'm living under a bridge. And I said, well, has anybody told you about Jesus Christ? Because I said, you need to get saved. And he said, I have received Christ as my Savior. I'm just trying to get back. Well, that was a great study for Renee, because she grew up here. So seeing a McDonald's in San Francisco with these people, it helped her to understand, look at these people have lost everything by bad choices. So all of these things have an example of following this or following that, and if you go this way, it's the wrong path. And notice verse 16 says, a fool lays open his folly. Like a fool who, as much as we preach about alcohol and drugs, many people die, many people are injured, many people have problems in their life because of alcohol and drugs, because they're fools. They keep doing what common sense would tell them not to do. So I'm going to stop right there, and we'll take a moment for prayer. Before we close, anybody have any questions? Come on. I see those looks. Okay, we'll start with the back row. We'll go to the front row. No questions? Perfectly clear. It's pretty clear. It is pretty clear. Anybody? Okay, how long is the government going to be shut down?
Don't know, but John and I can't wear our uniform. We can't be volunteer rangers.
Oh, they cut that out too?
Yeah, can't wear our uniform.
But you could go out there and,
I got a uniform, but we can't.
oh, you can't, okay.
No.